O textoi acute miritra longo. Michmethat 396 equipped with Philistine weapons found at the site, pursued the fleeing enemy forces. Joined by Israelites who had gone into hiding and those who had sided with the Philistines, they kept striking down the Philistines from Michmash to Ajalon. 1 14. 15-23, 31. According to 1 Samuel 13. 5, the Philistine forces at Michmash included 30,000 war chariots. This number is far greater than that involved in several other military expeditions. Compare JG 4. 13. 2 ch 12. 2, 3. 14. 9, and it is hard to imagine how so many war chariots could have been used in mountainous terrain. For this reason 30,000 is generally viewed as a scribal error. The Syriac Peshitta and the Lacardian edition of the Greek Septuagint read 3,000, and numerous Bible translations follow this rendering. At J.B. Mo, however, even lower figures have been suggested. Centuries later, the prophecy of Isaiah mentions Michmash as the place where the conquering Assyrian would deposit his articles. Issa 10. 24, 28. After the Israelite returned from Babylonian exile in 537 BCE, Michmash was apparently reoccupied by Benjamites. As 2. 1, 2, 27. NE 7. 31. 11. 31. Michmethath Michmiddle.Methath. A site on the boundary between Ephraim and Manasseh. It is identified with Batulajil, a short distance east of Shechem. This agrees with the biblical statement that Michmethath was in front of Shechem. Jos 16. 5, 6. 17. 7. Mitri possibly from a root meaning cell. A Benjamite and an ancestor of Elah who resided in Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. 1 ch 9. 1-3, 7, 8. Middin. A place in the Judean wilderness. Jos 15. 20, 61. Middin is perhaps to be identified with Bet Abodabak, situated in the low-lying plain called El Baki Abikali, the Valley of Acre, near the NW end of the Dead Sea. Midian Middle. And Midianites Midianites of belonging to Midian. 1. One of Abraham's sons by his concubine Keturah. The father of Ephah, Hanok, Abida, and Eldar. GE 25. 1, 2, 4. 1 ch 1. 32, 33. Before his death, Abraham gave presents to Midian and the other sons of his concubines and then sent them to the land of the east. GE 25. 5, 6. 2. The descendants of Abraham's son Midian are collectively designated as Midian and Midianites. New 31. 2, 3. At times the Bible seemingly refers to them as Ishmaelites. Compare GE 37. 25, 27, 28, 36. 39. 1. JG 8. 22, 24. This may imply that the descendants of Abraham through his sons Ishmael and Midian were much alike in their way of life, and there may have been a further amalgamation through intermarriage among the two peoples. It also appears that at least some of the Kenites were known as Midianites. Since the Kenites are already mentioned as a people before Midian's birth, this may mean that Miz's Kenite brother-in-law Hobab was a Midianite merely from a geographic standpoint. GE 15. 18, 19. New 10. 29. JG 1. 16. 4. 11. See Ishmaelite. Kenite. Being descendants of Abraham, the Midianites likely spoke a language that closely resembled Hebrew. Gideon, for instance, apparently had no difficulty in understanding the Midianites. JG 7. 13-15. 8. 18, 19. There is also a possibility, however, that Gideon learned the tongue of the Midianites, Israel having been under their domination for 7 years. JG 6. 1. The Midianites were primarily nomadic tent dwellers. JG 6. 5, 6. Hab 3. 7 but in Moses' day they are also reported as residing in cities. New 31. 9, 10 At that time they were quite prosperous, having asses and animals of the flock and the herd numbering into the tens of thousands. New 31. 32-34 Their riches included gold ornaments having a total weight of more than 191 kilograms 512 pounds t, valued now at over $2,150,000. New 31. 50-52. Apparently both men and women adorned themselves with gold ornaments, including nose rings and earrings. Midianite kings were arrayed in garments of wool dyed reddish purple, and even their otextoi acute miritra longo midwife 397,000 of Israelite males to become involved in sexual immorality and idolatry in connection with Baal of Peor. New 25. 1-9, 14-18. 31. 15, 16. 1 Co 10. 8. Re 2. 14 Thereafter the Israelites, in obedience to divine command, took vengeance upon Midian. The Midianite cities and walled camps in the area were consigned to the fire. Thousands of domestic animals and many gold articles were taken as spoils. With the exception of the virgins, all, including the 5 kings of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, were put to death. New 31. Less than 3 centuries later, the Midianites had recovered from this blow sufficiently to be able to oppress the Israelites for 7 years. Compare JG 6. 1. 11. 25, 26. Along with the Amalekites and Distiners, these tent-dwelling nomads, with their livestock and innumerable camels, penetrated Israel's land all the way to Gaza, plundering the domestic animals of the Israelites and also consuming their harvests. JG 6. 2-6. Crushing defeat by Gideon. Finally, when Israel called to Jehovah for aid, he raised up Gideon to deliver them. JG 6. 7-16 The rout that Jehovah effected by means of him was so complete that there is no record of any further harassment from the Midianites. JG 8. 28 Their princes Oreb and Zeb were slain, as were their kings Zebah and Zalmunna. JG 7. 25. 8. 5, 21. See Gideon. Centuries later the victory over Midian was still alluded to when illustrating the smashing of enemy power. Issa 9. 4. 10. 24-26. See also PS 83. 9-11. In contrast with the earlier enmity of the Midianites, a restoration prophecy pointed to the time when young male camels of Midian and of Ephah would bring gifts to Zion. Issa 60. 5, 6, 11-14. 3. The territory occupied by the Midianites was known as Midian or the land of Midian. 1 K 11. 18. Hab 3. 7 It is generally agreed that the descendants of Midian established themselves mainly in the NW part of Arabia just east of the Gulf of the Kaaba. But the extent of their land holdings is uncertain and must have varied in the course of their history. During Moses' lifetime many Midianites were apparently living near Moabite territory and in the vicinity of the region controlled by Amorite king Sihon. New 22. 4. 31. 8-12. Jos 13. 21. Moses himself spent about 40 years in the land of Midian. There he married Zipporah, one of the 7 daughters of Jethro the priest of Midian. See Jethro. By her he had 2 sons, Gershom and Eliezer. Moses' work as a shepherd for his father-in-law took him to the mountainous area around Horeb, suggesting that he resided in the vicinity of the Gulf of the Kaaba. However, whether the region around Horeb was then a part of the land of Midian cannot be determined. X2. 15-22. 3. 1. 4. 18-20. 18. 1-4. Act 7. 29, 30 It seems that at a later time Edom was at least in part referred to as Midian. 1 K 11. 14-18. Midwife. The Hebrew term for midwife is a feminine participle of the verb yamidal laid bare. give birth, and thus literally refers to a woman who helps to bear or give birth to a child. See birth. A midwife helps the mother during the ordeal of labor, and once the child is born she severs its navel cord and washes the infant. In ancient times she would also rub it with salt and swaddle it with cloth bands. As 16. 4. Close friends or relatives and elder women in the community sometimes served in this capacity, but because of the special knowledge, skill, and experience necessary, particularly when the delivery was difficult, midwifery was pursued as a profession by few. In the case of Benjamin's birth, when it was going hard with Rachel in making the delivery, the midwife was able to assure Rachel that she would have the son, though Rachel herself died. GE 35. 16-19 During the complicated delivery of Tammuz's twins, Perez and Zerah, the midwife was alert to identify the one she expected to be the firstborn. She quickly tied a scarlet piece on the extended otex to a acute Miritra Longo, Migdal 398 Migdal Tower of God. A fortified city in the territory of Naphtali. Jos 19. 32, 35, 38 One possible identification that has been suggested for Migdal is Majadel. This site is on a hill about 17 kilometers 11 miles of Tyre. Migdal Gad Tower of Good Fortune. A Judean city in the Shephelah. Jos 15. 20, 33, 37 It is perhaps to be identified with Bet El Madila Horvet Migdal Gad, about 20 kilometers 12 MW of Hebron. Migdal Tower. 1. An Egyptian site used as a reference point in describing the location of Israel's last encampment at Pi-Hahiroth before crossing the Red Sea. They were to encamp before Pi-Hahiroth between Migdal and the sea in view of Baal-Zephon. X14. 2. New 33. 5-8 Scholars generally hold that Migdal is likely an Egyptian pronunciation for the Hebrew Migdal, meaning tower, and that it doubtless refers to a military post or watchtower on the Egyptian border. However, there is evidence that there were several such Migdals along the Egyptian border. Even today there are 3 different villages bearing the name Mashtal, the present form of Migdal in Egyptian of Coptic derivation. See also No. 2. Though one of the Amarna tablets mentions a certain Ma'ajid, it gives no indication of its location. Since the location of the other sites, Pi-Hahiroth and Baal-Zephon, are not presently known, the location of Migdal remains uncertain. Some consider it as likely to have been a site on the height of Jebel Attica overlooking the northern end of the Gulf of Suez. Though no evidence is known today connecting such a site with the name Migdal, it would obviously be a strategic location for a watchtower or frontier post. 2. The Migdal mentioned by the prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel some 900 years after the Exodus. While it may be the same as that considered above, most commentators believe that a second Egyptian Migdal is involved. The prophet Ezekiel foretold a devastation due to come upon Egypt, evidently from Babylon, striking it from Migdal to Sin and to the boundary of Ethiopia. As 29. 10. 30. 6 Since Sin is in the extremis of ancient Egypt, it appears that this Migdal was in the extreme N, thus giving rise to a description similar to the familiar phrase from Dan down to Beersheba used with reference to Palestine. JG 20. 1 After Jerusalem's fall in 607 BCE, Jewish refugees settled in Migdal, Tapanhes, not Memphis, and in the land of Patros. But Migdal and other places were to witness the devouring sword of Babylon's king Nebuchadnezzar. J 44. 1. 46. 13, 14. This Migdal is usually identified with a fortress described in Egyptian hieroglyphic texts as guarding the any approaches of the country. The Antonine Itinerarium Provinciarum Antonini Augusti from the 3rd century CE refers to a site called Magdalo near Pelusium, which latter place lay on the Mediterranean coast at what might be called the entrance into Egypt for those coming from Philistia. Though there is no certainty, some scholars tentatively identify this frontier fortress called Migdal with Tel El, about 10 kilometers 6 mi SSW of Pelusium Tel El Faram. Migron threshing floor. A location at the outskirts of Gibeah where King Saul was encamped when Jonathan and his armor-bearer killed about 20 men from the Philistine outpost near Michmash. 1 13. 16, 23. 14. 1, 2, 13-16 Tel Mairim, about 1 km 0.6 mi WSW of Mukma's Michmash, is tentatively identified with Migran. At Isaiah 10:28, Migran is foretold to be one of the cities through which the Assyrians would pass on their way toward Jerusalem. Its being mentioned after Iath and before Michmash appears to locate Migran N, not S, of Michmash. Therefore, a second Migran maker unto the NW of Michmash has been suggested. However, if the Migran of Saul's day was still in existence, it seems unlikely that there would be another Otextoi acute Muritra Longo, mildness 399 worthy arrangement of Nehemiah's time. NE 9:38. 10. 1, 7, 8 He seems to be identical with the Miniamin of Nehemiah 12:41. In Hebrew, Mjamin seems to be a contraction of the name Miniamin. Mikloth 1. Father of Shemir Shemim. Descendant of the Benjamite Jael of Gibeon. 1 ch 8. 1, 29-32. 9. 35-38. 2. Leader appointed for the king's service during the second month in the division commanded by I the Ahohite. 1 ch 27. 1, 4. Miknah Mike Middle.Ne herds livestock of Jehovah. One of the Levites who played harps while the ark was transported from the house of Obed to Jerusalem. 1 ch 15. 17, 18, 21. Miktam Miktam. A Hebrew word contained in the superscriptions of 6 psalms ascribed to David. PS 16, 56-60 This term may simply mean that the psalms are inscriptions of the episodes that they relate. Malale Miller Middle.Lie. A Levite musician who marched in one of the inaugural processions on Jerusalem's rebuilt wall in Nehemiah's day. NE 12. 31, 36. Milcah. 1. Daughter of Abram's brother Haran, wife of his brother Nahor her uncle, and the sister of Lot. GE 11. 27, 29 Bethuel, one of Milcah's 8 children, became father to Rebekah. GE 22. 20-23. 24. 15, 24, 47. 2. One of Zelophehad's 5 daughters given an inheritance in the territory of Manasseh after their father's death. New 26. 33. 27. 1-4. 36. 10-12. Joes 17. 3, 4. Milcom from a root meaning king. Evidently the same as Melech, god of the Ammonites. It was to Milcom and other deities that King Solomon, when deviating from true worship toward the close of his reign, built high places. 1 K 11. 4, 5, 7, 33. 2 K 23. 13. See Melech. Mildew. Generally, any of numerous plant diseases caused by fungi. The ruining of crops by mildew was one of the calamities experienced by unfaithful Israel. De 28. 22. 1 Chi 8. 37-39. 2 Ch 6. 28-30. Am 4. 9. Hag 2. 17 It has been suggested that the mildew of the Bible may be black stem rust Puccinia gramineans. This serious parasitic disease deprives plants of needed nourishment and water and thus can cause the kernels of grain to dry up. Small rust-colored spots appear on the stems and leaves of attacked cereal plants. Mildness. A New Testament Word Book, by William Barclay, says of the adjective pyramidal.ys. In classical Greek this is a lovely word. Of things it means gentle. It is used, for instance, of a gentle breeze or a gentle voice. Of persons it means mild or gracious. There is gentleness in prowess, but behind the gentleness there is the strength of steel. It is not a spineless gentleness, a sentimental fondness, a passive quietism. London, 1956, pages 103, 104 Vise Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words states that the noun form pyramidal. Ytes consists not in a person's outward behavior only, nor yet in his relations to his fellow men, as little in his mere natural disposition. Rather it is an inwrought grace of the soul, and the exercises of it are first and chiefly towards God. It is that temper of spirit in which we accept his dealings with us as good, and therefore without disputing or resisting. It is closely linked with the word tapenephros and overline humility, and follows directly upon it. 1981, Volume 3, pages 55, 56. The word pyramidal.ys is variously translated in Bible versions meek, mild, mild-tempered, and gentle. KJ, as, NW, NE however, as expressed in Barclay's work quoted in the foregoing, pyramidal.ys goes somewhat deeper than gentleness and, when used of persons, means mild, gracious. Although Jehovah is one who will not tolerate sin and badness, he has lovingly provided the way of approach to himself through the ransom sacrifice and priestly services of Jesus Christ. Jehovah's worshippers and servants can therefore seek his face without any feeling of morbid fear and dread. Heb 4. 16. 10. 19-22. 1 Joe 4. 17, 18 Jesus represented Jehovah God so perfectly that no text to acute miracle longo mildness 400 unbalanced or caused to lose his good sense. Lack of mildness of temper is the result of insecurity, frustration, lack of faith and hope, and even desperation. A person who is not mild-tempered is described by the proverb as a city broken through, without a wall, is the man that has no restraint for his spirit. PR 25. 28 He is open and vulnerable to the invasion of any and all improper thoughts, which may motivate him to improper actions. A fruit of the Spirit. Mildness is a fruit of God's Holy Spirit, his active force. 5. 22, 23 God is therefore the source of mildness, and one must apply to him for his spirit and must cultivate this fruit of the Spirit to have genuine mildness of temper. Hence, it is not acquired by the exercise of sheer willpower, but results from drawing close to God. Lack of mildness results in undue excitability, harshness, lack of self-control, and fights. On the other hand, the Christian is counseled to preserve unity and peace by lowliness of mind and mildness. F4. 1-3. Jealousy and contention, if allowed to take root and grow, will lead to disorders of every sort. Mildness, on the other hand, will prevent such conditions from developing among the followers of Christ. Hence, the Bible writer James urges those who are wise and understanding in the congregation to display fine conduct in the form of mildness that belongs to wisdom, the wisdom from above. Just 3. 13, 17. Mildness, in the Bible, is frequently coupled with spirit, for example, mildness of spirit, or mild spirit. Genuine mildness is, accordingly, something that is more than an outward, transitory or occasional quality. Rather, it is a part of one's make-up, or temperament. The Apostle Peter points out this fact when he says, "And do not let your adornment be that of the external braiding of the hair and of the putting on of gold ornaments or the wearing of outer garments, but let it be the secret person of the heart in the incorruptible apparel of the quiet and mild spirit, which is of great value in the eyes of God." 1 P 3. 3, 4. The Apostle Paul writes, "Clothe yourselves with mildness," which, superficially read, might seem to indicate that it is somewhat of an mere outward appearance. But in the same context he admonishes, "Clothe yourselves with the new personality,